A mysterious sighting near Vatican City has left a priest questioning everything. Late one evening, Father Luca, a devout clergyman, claims to have witnessed an otherworldly craft hovering near St. Peter's Basilica. The encounter was brief, but the implications were earth-shattering. Did this UFO hold secrets that could challenge the Church's doctrines? As whispers spread through the holy halls, Father Luca embarks on a forbidden journey to uncover a truth that could alter faith as we know it. The stillness of the Roman night was sacred as Father Angelo walked through St. Peter's Basilica. The towering spires loomed above, silent witnesses to centuries of faith and devotion. The faint echoes of his footsteps filled the nave as he carried out his nightly ritual of locking up the basilica, an act he had done countless times before. Yet, tonight, an unsettling tension lingered in the air, an inexplicable pull that made his steps feel heavier, as though something unseen pressed upon him. Father Angelo was a man of unwavering faith, a scholar whose devotion to God was matched by his curiosity about the mysteries of creation. Yet, as he approached the massive bronze doors leading to the piazza, he felt something unusual: doubt. It wasn't doubt in God, but in the completeness of his understanding of Him. There was a growing sense within him that the world was not as simple as he had once believed. He pushed the heavy doors open, stepping into the piazza. The grandeur of St. Peter's Square unfolded before him, cobblestones shimmering under the lamp-post's glow. The fountains gurgled soothingly in the background. He took a deep breath, gazing at the sky, a canvas of stars, each a pinprick of light in the infinite void. It was a sight that reminded him of God's magnificence. But tonight, something was different. A sudden burst of light illuminated the piazza, so brilliant it rivaled the moon's glow. Father Angelo shielded his eyes and turned toward the source. Hovering above St. Peter's Basilica was an object unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered like liquid mercury, shifting and morphing as if alive. The object was silent, eerily so, and its presence filled the air with a palpable energy that made his skin tingle. Angelo's first instinct was to drop to his knees. Was this a divine vision? A sign from God? His mind raced as he whispered a prayer, his voice trembling. But as he watched, the object began to move. It glided gracefully through the air, defying all known laws of physics. It darted side to side, its movements impossibly precise, then shot straight up into the sky with a speed that left him breathless. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. The piazza plunged back into darkness, the only sound the gentle trickle of the fountains. Father Angelo remained frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. What had he just witnessed? His mind struggled to process it. It was as though the universe had torn open, revealing a glimpse of something far greater than himself, greater than the Church. He staggered back inside the basilica, his legs weak. He needed answers. But to whom could he turn? The bishop? No, he would dismiss Angelo as delusional. The Vatican had always been cautious, almost secretive about such matters. He thought of the Vatican secret archives, shrouded in mystery and rumor. Could the answers lie within those ancient walls? The thought both terrified and excited him. As he made his way to his quarters, Angelo felt a growing unease. He had spent his life serving God, seeking to understand His will, but now he was faced with a question that shook the foundation of his faith. Was this truly a sign from God, or was it something else entirely? The more he thought, the less he slept. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as visions of the shimmering object replayed in his mind. Before dawn, he resolved to act. Clad in his robes, he ventured into the vast corridors of the Vatican, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The secret archives were forbidden to most, but his position as a scholar granted limited access. He prayed silently as he approached the heavy wooden doors, steeling himself for what he might find behind them. His hand hesitated before pushing them open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old parchment. Rows of shelves stretched into the darkness, filled with texts chronicling the church's history. He lit a candle and began his search. Hours passed, and just as hope waned, he found it, a manuscript labeled Angeli Celestis. The text was in Latin, its ink faded but legible. It described phenomena eerily similar to what he had seen, glowing objects in the sky described as heavenly beings, or celestial messengers. But the accounts were vague, riddled with contradictions. Some described the objects as divine, others as harbingers of doom. The discrepancies unsettled him, but they also confirmed that his encounter was not an isolated event. One passage caught his eye. "The light shall come not as a sign of the end, but as a call to seek the truth beyond the heavens." He closed the manuscript, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. This was no ordinary event. It was something transcending human understanding, demanding further exploration. As he left the archives, clutching the manuscript tightly, he felt unseen eyes upon him. The Vatican was a place of faith, but also secrets, and Angelo had stumbled upon one of its deepest. His quest for answers would challenge not only his faith but the very fabric of reality itself. Father Angelo's hands trembled as he clutched the manuscript to his chest, navigating the Vatican's labyrinthine halls. The faint glow of morning seeped through tall windows, but the corridors felt colder than usual. The words from the text replayed in his mind. "The light shall come not as a sign of the end, but as a call to seek the truth beyond the heavens." What truth lay beyond, and why had it been hidden? The Vatican secret archives were both a sanctuary of knowledge and a fortress of secrets. Angelo had only accessed select, heavily vetted documents before. The idea that these guarded halls might contain answers to his vision filled him with both awe and unease. Returning to his chambers, he hid the manuscript, the day's tasks ahead, prayers, confessions, becoming a blur. His mind refused to focus, consumed instead by the image of the glowing object. Could it truly be divine? Or was it something the church refused to acknowledge? During the midday meal, murmurs among the clergy reached his ears. Several witnesses had seen strange lights over Rome the night before. A tourist had even captured a blurry photograph. Whispers of a miracle mingled with quiet skepticism. Angelo's heart raced. His experience was not an isolated event, yet no one mentioned it openly near senior officials. Was this silence intentional, or had the witnesses dismissed it as coincidence? That evening, he locked himself in his quarters and returned to the manuscript. The fragile pages described celestial lights appearing in times of upheaval or transformation. Some accounts named them messengers, while others warned of their apocalyptic nature. One phrase leapt out at him: the Congregatio Umbra. A chill ran down his spine. The text hinted at a secret council within the church, existing for centuries to safeguard dangerous truths. If this council knew of the manuscript or his interest, they would act to suppress it. A sudden urgency gripped him. He could not act alone. There was only one person he could trust: Sister Emilia, an archivist with access to restricted Vatican texts. Emilia was a historian, sharp and loyal, but with a quiet curiosity that rivaled his own. Under cover of darkness, he made his way to the library where she often worked late. He found her at a long table surrounded by stacks of books. The soft glow of a lamp lit her face as she catalogued an ancient codex. She looked up, startled by his presence. "Father Angelo, what brings you here at this hour?" she asked. Angelo hesitated, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "Sister Emilia, I need your help," he said, lowering his voice. He placed the manuscript before her. Her eyes widened as she read the title. "Angeli Celestis," she murmured. "Where did you find this?" "In the secret archives," he admitted. "What does it mean?" And what do you know of the Congregatio Umbra?" At the mention of the council, Amelia paled. She closed the manuscript and leaned closer. "You shouldn't speak of such things," she whispered. "The Congregatio Umbra is no myth. They are real, and they are always watching. If they suspect you're delving into forbidden matters, they will act." "Act?" Angelo asked, his voice cracking. "Why? What is the church hiding?" She sighed, her gaze darting toward the library door. "The church's mission is to guide and protect the faithful. But some truths are too dangerous, truths that could shake the very foundations of faith. These lights, these heavenly beings, have appeared throughout history. Some believe they are divine, others think they are far more complex, something humanity is not ready to face." Angelo's pulse quickened. "And the Congregatio Umbra?" "They exist to contain these truths," she said. "They monitor phenomena like what you saw. If they sense these events could disrupt the faithful, they intervene, sometimes harshly." The weight of her words pressed heavily on him. "What do you believe, sister?" "I believe in God's infinite creation," she replied carefully. "And I believe what you saw was no accident. But tread carefully, Father. If the Congregatio Umbra learns of this, they will stop at nothing to bury it." Her warning hung in the air. Angelo realized he was no longer just a witness to something extraordinary. He had become a target. The lights in the sky were more than a vision. They were a call to action, and the deeper he searched for answers, the more perilous his path became. As Angelo left the library that night, the weight of the manuscript in his hands felt heavier. The truth was close, yet buried beneath layers of secrecy. He could already feel unseen eyes watching his every step. The corridors stretched ahead, silent yet oppressive, and each flicker of shadow seemed to carry the weight of judgment. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in rhythm with his steps. Turning back was no longer an option. The light had appeared for a reason, and Angelo vowed to uncover its purpose, no matter the cost. The stars above seemed to whisper promises of revelation, but the shadows of the Vatican whispered danger just as clearly. The silence of the Vatican's halls weighed heavily on Father Angelo as he awoke the next morning, the events of the night before replaying in his mind. His encounter with Sister Amelia had deepened his conviction, but also heightened his dread. The truth he sought was no longer an abstract idea. It was a threat. Yet the light he had seen burned vividly in his memory, stronger than any scripture or sermon he had ever studied. After morning prayers, Angelo returned to his chambers, retrieving the manuscript from its hiding place. He flipped through the fragile pages, searching for anything he might have missed. One phrase stood out. "The heavenly light shall converge where the sacred and the stars align." Sacred and the stars align. Could it be a location? Angelo thought of two places, St. Peter's Basilica and the Vatican Observatory at Castel Gandolfo. Both were sacred, yet tied to the stars. He decided the observatory might hold answers. Its astronomers studied the heavens. Perhaps they had witnessed the same light. By midday, Angelo arranged for a car to take him to Castel Gandolfo under the pretense of academic research. The journey was quiet, the rolling hills of the Roman countryside passing like pages of an ancient tome. Angelo prayed silently, asking for courage. The light had chosen him, he believed, and though fear gnawed at him, he couldn't let it win. The Vatican Observatory stood atop the verdant hills, its domed telescope pointing skyward like a sentinel of truth. Upon arrival, Angelo was greeted by Father Matteo, the observatory's lead astronomer, a kindly man with a love for both theology and science. "Ah, Father Angelo," Matteo said warmly. "What brings you here?" Angelo hesitated. "I've been researching historical accounts of celestial phenomena," he said, and was hoping to review any recent observations, particularly unusual ones. Matteo raised an eyebrow but nodded. Come, let me show you our logs." The two priests entered the main office, where rows of bookshelves held meticulous records of astronomical activity. Matteo pulled a recent logbook and placed it on the table. "We record everything here," he said, "from meteor showers to unusual light patterns. Let me know if you see anything that catches your interest." Angelo flipped through the pages, his heart racing when he found an entry dated the night of his encounter. The log described a luminous object moving against expected celestial patterns over Rome. Matteo noticed Angelo's reaction. "That one caught our attention too," Matteo said. "It wasn't a satellite or any known astronomical event. We couldn't identify it." "Did you report it?" Angelo asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Matteo's expression darkened. "We sent it to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. They handle phenomena like this. Why do you ask?" Angelo's pulse quickened. The Congregatio Umbra would have seen that report. "Just curiosity," he replied, closing the logbook. "Thank you, Father Matteo. This has been enlightening." As Angelo prepared to leave, Matteo placed a hand on his shoulder. "Be careful, Father," he said softly. "The stars reveal much, but not all truths are welcome." The warning echoed in Angelo's mind during the drive back to the Vatican. The logbook confirmed what he had seen. The light was real, and it was being watched. Castel Gandolfo had provided a clue, but not the answers he needed. His next step had to be more daring. That night, in his quarters, Angelo stared at the manuscript and the notes he had taken. The phrase, "sacred and the stars align," repeated in his mind. He realized there was one place left to search: the Apostolic Palace. The palace housed some of the Vatican's most restricted documents, including correspondence between popes and theologians. If the light had appeared before, it would be mentioned there. But accessing such records would require cunning and betrayal. Angelo prayed for guidance, his hands clasped tightly. "Lord," he whispered, "if this is your will, grant me the strength to see it through, and if I am wrong, guide me back to your path." The silence that followed was both comforting and unsettling. Angelo took it as a sign. Tomorrow he would infiltrate the Apostolic Palace. He had come too far to turn back, and the light's purpose was too great to ignore. As the night deepened, shadows danced across the walls of his room, their presence a stark reminder of the danger he faced. Every creak of the floorboards outside his door sent his pulse racing. The Congregatio Umbra was not a distant threat. It was likely already watching him. Yet Angelo could not retreat. The light had appeared for a reason, and he had been chosen to follow it. The stars above seemed to whisper promises of revelation, while the walls around him whispered danger just as clearly. He closed his eyes, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The journey into the heart of the Vatican's secrets would test every ounce of his faith, courage, and resolve. But Angelo knew this. He could no longer remain silent. The light demanded answers, and he would find them, no matter the cost. Father Angelo stood before the gates of the Apostolic Palace, cloaked in the silence of twilight. He had spent the day preparing, poring over old maps of the palace's layout and praying for strength. The task ahead was monumental: to infiltrate one of the Vatican's most secure areas and uncover documents tied to the mysterious light. His heart raced beneath his robes, where the tools he had hidden felt heavier than ever. Access to the palace was strictly limited, even for clergy. Angelo had learned of a discreet service entrance often used by maintenance staff, a narrow corridor that led to the lower archives. If the answers he sought were hidden, they would lie within these walls. But it was a risk. The Congregatio Umbra's influence was everywhere, and he knew they would not tolerate his intrusion. As the bells of St. Peter's Basilica tolled the hour, Angelo moved. He waited until the guards were distracted during the shift change, then slipped into the corridor. The air was cool and carried the scent of stone and age. The faint hum of the Vatican's inner workings echoed around him. Each step felt deliberate, every creak of the floor a reminder of the risk he was taking. The lower archives were vast, filled with rows of shelves and cabinets that stretched endlessly into the dim light. Dust floated in the glow of a single overhead lamp, adding to the air of secrecy. Angelo paused to orient himself, his breaths shallow and controlled. The documents he needed, correspondence or records about the light, would not be stored here. Those would be in the restricted upper levels, under lock and key. Ascending a stone staircase cautiously, Angelo flinched at every creak of the steps. His pulse quickened, the fear of being discovered gnawing at him. At the top, dim lighting cast long shadows over rows of shelves. A faint hum from a single desk lamp provided the only sound. The atmosphere was oppressive, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin and amplified every noise. On the desk lay a ledger, its open pages listing the archive's contents. Angelo scanned the document, his eyes landing on a section labeled Correspondence, Pontifical Confidential. Whispering a prayer, he followed the directions to a locked cabinet near the far wall. The lock was old but sturdy, its brass surface cool under his fingers. Angelo retrieved a small set of tools he had borrowed earlier. His hands trembled as he worked, each metallic click of the mechanism echoing in the silent room. Sweat beaded on his brow as the lock finally gave way. Inside, he found bundles of letters bearing ornate seals of popes long past. Angelo sifted through them carefully, his eyes scanning for words like light and visitation. His breath caught when he uncovered a letter from 1593, written by Pope Clement VIII. A heavenly light descended during Vespers, its brilliance surpassing the stars. The faithful took it as a sign, yet I fear it may be a test or a harbinger. The Congregatio Umbra advises secrecy, that the flock might not falter, yet I feel the weight of this truth upon my soul. Angelo's hands shook as he read. The light had appeared before, centuries ago, and the Church had hidden it. Further letters described similar phenomena, each invoking the Congregatio Umbra. Their message was consistent: conceal the truth for the sake of the faithful. Angelo's mind raced as he pieced together fragments of this hidden history. The light was no isolated event. It was something the Church feared deeply. He was so engrossed he didn't hear footsteps until it was too late. A shadow fell over him, and he turned to see a man in dark robes, his expression cold and unyielding. "You should not be here, Father Angelo," the man said, his voice low but firm. "The Congregatio Umbra does not tolerate those who pry into forbidden matters." Angelo's blood ran cold. The man's presence confirmed his worst fears. "The light I saw, it's real. Why has the Church hidden it?" "Because the truth is dangerous," the man replied. "It is not for you to decide what the faithful can endure. You risk everything by seeking what must remain hidden." "The truth is God's creation," Angelo said, his fear giving way to defiance. "How can we serve him if we hide from it?" The man's expression darkened. "You have seen too much. Come quietly, or face the consequences." Clutching the letters, Angelo acted on instinct. He darted past the man, his heart pounding as he ran through the archives. Shouts echoed behind him as he wove through the maze of shelves and staircases. His path blurred as instinct took over, the weight of the documents urging him forward. Finally, he burst into the night air. The cool breeze hit his face, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere of the archives. Angelo didn't stop running until he reached the safety of his quarters. Locking the door behind him, he collapsed onto the floor, the precious letters spread before him. Each document confirmed his fears. The light was no mere celestial event, but something the Church had encountered and concealed for centuries. The Congregatio Umbra's role was undeniable. They were not protectors of truth, but gatekeepers of secrecy. As the night deepened, Angelo knew he had crossed a line. The Congregatio Umbra would not let this go unanswered. Yet the light demanded answers, and he could not abandon his search. The stars above seemed to whisper promises of revelation, while the shadows warned of dangers yet to come. Angelo's resolve hardened. He would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Father Angelo woke to a sharp knock at his door, the sound echoing through his small quarters like a crack of thunder. Panic surged through him as his eyes darted to the letters scattered on his desk. He quickly gathered them, shoving the fragile papers into the folds of his robes. Another knock, firmer this time, jolted him into action. Whoever was outside would not wait much longer. "Coming," he called, his voice cracking as he hurriedly cleared the desk. He opened the door to find Sister Amelia standing there, her expression a mixture of urgency and fear. "Father Angelo," she said in a hushed tone, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to follow. "We need to talk, now." Angelo stepped aside, allowing her to enter. As soon as the door closed behind her, Amelia turned to him, her voice low and trembling. "They know." The words sent a chill down Angelo's spine. "What do you mean?" "The Congregatio Umbra," Amelia said. "They know you've been searching. They've ordered your removal." Angelo sank into a chair, his mind racing. He had known this moment would come, but hearing it aloud made the danger feel all too real. "Removal," he repeated, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. "What does that mean?" "It means you're no longer safe here," Amelia said, her eyes darting around the room. "You need to leave the Vatican before they find you." Angelo clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. "I can't leave, not yet. I've uncovered something they've been hiding for centuries. The light, Amelia. It's real, and it's more than just a phenomenon. It's a message, a call to uncover the truth." Amelia hesitated, then sighed. "I know," she admitted. "I've seen the same records. But Angelo, this isn't just about the truth. If the Congregatio Umbra feels threatened, they will stop at nothing to silence you. You've seen what they're capable of." Angelo stood, pacing the small room. "If I run, I'll be abandoning everything. The light appeared for a reason, Amelia. I can't turn my back on it." "Then we need a plan," Amelia said firmly. "Something that doesn't involve you staying here, waiting to be found." Angelo paused, the weight of her words sinking in. She was right. He couldn't fight the Congregatio Umbra from within the Vatican walls. But where could he go? And how could he ensure the truth would come to light? "I need to get these documents out of here," Angelo said, gesturing to the letters. "If they stay in the Vatican, they'll be destroyed." Amelia nodded. "There's a way," she said, lowering her voice even further. "The Jesuit network. They've smuggled sensitive materials out of dangerous places before. If we can get the letters to them, they can ensure their safety." "Can we trust them?" Angelo asked. "We have to," Amelia replied. "It's our only option." The plan was hastily set into motion. That night, under the cover of darkness, Angelo and Amelia made their way through the Vatican's hidden corridors, the precious letters hidden in a satchel slung over Angelo's shoulder. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound amplified in the silence. The weight of what they were carrying pressed heavily on them both. Reaching the Jesuit quarters, they were met by Father Ignacio, a stern but kind-faced man who had been briefed by Amelia. "These documents are of great importance," Angelo explained, handing over the satchel. "They must be kept safe." Ignacio nodded solemnly. "We'll ensure they reach the right hands," he promised. "But you must leave immediately. The Congregatio Umbra will not stop hunting you." Angelo turned to Amelia. "Will you be safe?" She gave him a small, sad smile. "They won't suspect me. I'll stay here, and I'll continue searching for answers." Angelo hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, Amelia, for everything." With the letters entrusted to the Jesuits, Angelo slipped out of the Vatican through an underground passage known only to a select few. The narrow tunnel, damp and suffocating, seemed to stretch endlessly, but Angelo pressed on. Each step took him further from the Vatican, and deeper into the unknown. Emerging into the cool night air outside the city walls, Angelo paused to catch his breath. For the first time, he was truly alone. The weight of his mission settled heavily on his shoulders. The light, the truth, and the danger, all of it was now his to bear. As he made his way through the streets of Rome, Angelo knew he couldn't stay there for long. The Congregatio Umbra's reach extended far beyond the Vatican. But where could he go? And who could he trust? A memory surfaced, one that gave him a glimmer of hope. Years ago, he had studied with a theologian named Father Alvarez, a man who had dedicated his life to uncovering suppressed truths within the Church. If anyone could help him make sense of the light and its significance, it was Alvarez. Setting his sights on Alvarez's remote monastery in the Italian countryside, Angelo began his journey. The road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and Angelo would stop at nothing to find it. The monastery stood on a hill, shrouded in mist and bathed in dawn's soft glow. Father Angelo approached cautiously, his footsteps crunching on gravel. Exhausted from days of travel, he clutched the fragile letters close to his chest. This place was his last hope, a sanctuary where he could seek guidance and unravel the truth about the light. Father Alvarez greeted him at the gate, his weathered face breaking into a faint smile. "Angelo," he said, clasping his hands, "what brings you here at such an hour?" "I need your help," Angelo replied, pulling the letters from his satchel. Their edges were frayed, their ink smudged from the journey. "The Church has hidden something I can't ignore." Alvarez's smile faded as he examined the documents. "Come inside," he said gravely. The monastery was quiet, its halls filled with the soft rustle of robes and whispered prayers. Alvarez led Angelo to a study lined with bookshelves. A crucifix hung above the desk, its shadow stretching across the room in the pale morning light. "Tell me everything," Alvarez said, motioning for Angelo to sit. Angelo recounted the events of the past weeks, the light above St. Peter's Basilica, the forbidden manuscript, the secret letters, and his escape from the Congregatio Umbra. Alvarez listened intently, his expression grave but calm. "You believe the light is a message?" Alvarez asked, his voice steady. "I know it is," Angelo said firmly. "The letters describe its appearances at pivotal moments in history. The Church has hidden it, but I believe it's meant to guide us, to reveal something greater." Alvarez leaned back, his gaze fixed on the crucifix. "What you've uncovered is dangerous," he said after a pause. "Not because it's false, but because it challenges the foundations of faith. The Congregatio Umbra believes it protects the Church by keeping these truths hidden, but perhaps the time has come for them to be revealed." "What should I do?" Angelo asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "The Congregatio Umbra won't stop hunting me, but if I stay silent, the truth remains buried." "The light is a test," Alvarez said, pacing the room, "of your faith and humanity's readiness to accept what lies beyond understanding. If you wish to reveal it, you'll need proof, something undeniable." "And where would I find such proof?" Angelo asked. Alvarez hesitated before retrieving a leather-bound book from a shelf. He placed it on the desk and opened it to a map marked with faded notes. "Here," he said, pointing to a remote location in southern Italy. "La Montagna di Luce, the Mountain of Light. It is a place older than the Vatican, where the light is said to descend most clearly, unfiltered by human doubt. If you go there, you may find your answers, or more questions." Angelo studied the map, his resolve hardening. "I have to go." "Then go with God," Alvarez said, placing a hand on Angelo's shoulder. "But be careful. The Congregatio Umbra will not stop searching for you, and if you find what you seek, be ready to face the consequences. The journey to La Montagne di Luz was grueling. Angelo traversed rugged terrain, dense forests, and narrow mountain passes, the map clutched tightly in his hand. Each step carried him closer to the unknown, the weight of his mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. By nightfall, he reached the mountain's base. The air was thin and cold, the stars above blazing brighter than he had ever seen. He began the ascent, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Each step was harder than the last, but something about the mountain felt alive, as if it were calling to him. Hours later, Angelo reached a plateau near the summit. There, under the vast expanse of the night sky, he saw it. The light. It descended like a shimmering veil, its brilliance far greater than anything he had ever witnessed. It was not blinding, but mesmerizing, its hues shifting between gold, silver, and blue. Angelo fell to his knees, tears streaming as the light's warmth enveloped him. In that moment, he understood. The light was not a test or a message. It was an invitation to look beyond the confines of human understanding, to embrace the infinite possibilities of creation. It was both divine and universal, a bridge between faith and knowledge, between heaven and earth. But the moment was fleeting. Footsteps shattered the stillness. Angelo turned to see shadowed figures emerging from the darkness, agents of the Congregatio Umbra. "You cannot take this from us," Angelo said, his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. "This is not yours to reveal," one agent replied. "For the good of the Church, you must come with us." "I will not hide the truth," Angelo said. "Not anymore." The confrontation was brief but violent. Angelo fought with every ounce of strength he had, but he was no match for the agents. As they dragged him away, his eyes remained fixed on the light, its brilliance seared into his memory. He didn't know if he would survive or if the truth would ever reach the world. But in his heart, Angelo carried the certainty that the light could not be extinguished. It was eternal, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to see it for what it truly was.